Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make granny square pants. And I have wanted to make granny square pants since before I even learned how to crochet. I would always be scrolling through Pinterest and I'd see them and I'd just be like, I want to make that so bad, but it always seemed so daunting because of the amount of granny squares and the assembly and all of that. But once I did it, once I got into the groove of making all the squares, it was a breeze, and I hope that this video is a breeze for you. I'm going to show you how to easily make a granny square and how to easily assemble the pants, and then you can make your own, and it's just such a fun project. They can be used all throughout the seasons, and the yarn that I'm using is an upcycled alpaca blend from Hobbii that they sent me, and it is a very, very nice yarn to work with. I'm so thankful for them sending it over. It's beautiful. The colors are so vibrant, and I absolutely loved working with it for this project. So thank you, Hobbii Yarn. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support that you bring to my channel and for watching my videos and for tagging me in your creations. I just love sharing my art with you. So let's go ahead and start the video. First things first, I have to show you guys how to make a granny square. And if you already know, you can go ahead and skip to the assembly part, but I'm going to show you a very easy and simple way to make your granny squares. For the yarn, I'm just using this upcycled alpaca blend from Hobbii. This is a new yarn, limited edition from them. They sent it to me to try out and I'm obsessed with it. I love it. These colors are amazing. They're so soft, easy to work with, very, very comfortable, and I thought they'd be perfect for this project. So I'm going to show you how to make a very fast granny square. I'm doing 5 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then my last color is like my border color or like the main color of the pants. But you can do 4, you can do smaller amount, like smaller granny squares, you can do 3 rows. I just wanted to do 5, so I had 5-inch squares, just because I kind of like the look of the 5-inch square rather than the 4. Because I did make 4s and then I kind of like the 5 better. So we'll talk about what kind of measurements to take in a few minutes after I show you how to make the granny square. But first step, let's go ahead and make our first granny square. I start off my granny squares with a magic circle, so I'm going to show you how to easily do a magic circle. So I have the short end of my yarn here and the long end here. And I'm just going to wrap my long end around my 3 fingers. To make this X, we have the short end here, long end here. So we have the X right here. Now I'm going to take my hook, and I'm using a 5mm hook, which is what my yarn suggests. And I'm going right underneath this first loop here. And then I'm grabbing this one with my hook, twisting it like so, removing my fingers, and then I'm going to pinch that just to keep it in place for a second. And then I'm going to chain 2. And there we have our magic circle. Next, I am going to put 2 double crochets into the ring. So 1 and 2. And then I'm going to chain 2. And then put 3 double crochets into the ring. 2 and 3, then I'm going to chain 2 again. I'm going to put 3 more double crochets into the ring. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and then I'm again going to put 3 double crochets into the ring. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters of 3 double crochets, since our first initial chain 2 counts as our first double crochet of that cluster. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters, and now I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to pull this end of the magic circle to tighten it. Just like that. And then, since this is just personal preference of mine, but for my granny squares, I usually slip stitch not into the chain 2. I slip stitch into the first double crochet of that cluster, just because it's a lot easier, of the first cluster that we made, like the first actual double crochet that we made. I slip stitch into that one just because it's a lot easier to see and it's definitely up to you, but I just do it that way and it doesn't look any different to me. So if you would like to do the same thing, that is definitely up to you. It's just easier for me to see the first double crochet, you know, rather than that chain 3. So you can do the chain 2. So if you want to go into the top of the chain 2, you're more than welcome, but I usually go into the first double crochet of the row that we made with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to cut my yarn, pull out my hook, and tighten it just a little bit. And there we have our first row finished. Now I'm on my second row, and I'm going to attach my new yarn, which is this purple color. And always attach your yarn in a corner space, and the corner spaces are these chain 2 spaces here. So always attach your new yarn into a corner space rather than one of the side spaces here that we have. Always attach to a corner. And you can attach in many different ways your new yarn, but what I like to do is insert my hook into the corner space that I choose, and then I'm going to just drape my new yarn color over my hook, and then I'm going to grab both strands of the new yarn and do a chain of 1, and then tighten both strands, drop the little strand, and then chain 1 again for my first chain 2 of the row. And then remember how that chain 2 counts as a double crochet. So we're going to do our next 2 double crochets into this corner space. So we have 3 double crochets, and then we're going to chain 2 again, 1, 2, and then we're going to put 3 more double crochets into that corner space. 1, 2, 3. So you have 3 double crochets, or that chain 2, 2 double crochets, and then the chain 2 for the corner, and then 3 double crochets. And we're going to be doing this in every corner space. So this is another one. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets into that same corner space. And now I'm going to move on to this corner here and put 1, 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets into that same space. Move on to the next corner and do the same thing that we've been doing with 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. And then we're just going to, again, slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the row. Then I'm going to chain 1 and cut my yarn, pull it out and tighten, and there we have row 2. Now at this point, I always weave in my magic circle strand, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so we have rows 1 and 2 finished, and I'm just going to bring in my new color like I did with the last color. Just insert again into the corner space rather than one of the sides, and then I'm going to chain 1 with this new yarn, tighten all the colors, and then I'm going to chain 1 again, so we have a chain of 2, and then I'm going to, like we did in the previous row, put 3 double crochets, or technically since that first chain 2 counts as the first double crochet, we're going to only put 2 to start. Then you're going to chain 2 and put 3 more double crochets into that same corner space, and we're going to do this consistently throughout the entire granny square, with always doing 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets in the corner spaces. And now we have come across our first side space, And for the side spaces, you just go directly into the side space with 1, 2, 3 double crochets. And then you go ahead and go to the next space, which is a corner space. So we know that we put 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets into that same space. And then we reached our next side space, so we're just going to go right into it with our 3 double crochet cluster, just 3 double crochets, and then we're going to go into our next space, which is of course our corner. So we're going to do 3 double crochets, chain of 2, and 3 double crochets again in that same space. Now we reached our side space, 3 double crochets, and then our corner, 3 double crochets, chain of 2, and 3 double crochets into that same space. And then in that side is our last one of the row. So we're just going to put our last cluster there of 3 double crochets, and then again slip stitch, chain 1, cut your yarn, pull out your hook and tighten, and there we have row 3. Now we are going to do row 4, and we're going to attach our yarn in the corner space like we've been doing. You can attach it any way you like, of course, any way you feel that it's the most secure for you. And then I'm going to chain another one, so we have a chain of 2, and then I'm going to put my next 2 double crochets right next to it, since that first chain 2 counts as our first double crochet. And then, like we've been doing, just put 3 more double crochets into that same space, since it is our corner space, and every corner space requires 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, every single one. And then every single side space that you reach, now we have 2, always know that every single side space will require a cluster, just one cluster of 3 double crochets. And you just go directly to the next cluster, directly to the next side space, and put in your next cluster of 3 double crochets. And now we've reached our corner again, and we're going to do 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets into the corner space. And then we have side spaces, so we just go directly into them with 3 double crochets, and 3 double crochets into the next. And then the corner, we have 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets into that corner. Now we have a side space, so we're just doing 3 double crochet cluster there, and then in our next side space, 3 double crochets, and then in our corner space, 1, 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets all in that same space. And then we reached our side, so we're going to do 3 double crochets into each side space, because every cluster is always going to be 3 double crochets for this granny square. Always 3. And then we've reached the beginning, so I'm slip stitching into the top of my first double crochet, chaining 1, cutting my yarn, pull out my hook and tighten, and there I have row 4 completed. Now I'm just going to finish off by doing my row 5 in my black yarn, and I'm just going to join it in the corner here. Always join in your corners. And then I chained 1 with it, and now I'm going to chain another one because we need a chain of 2. And then just like we did with the previous row and all the other ones, except the first row, of course, we are going to put our 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets into that first corner space of, and not just the first corner space, but every corner space. 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. And now we have 3 side spaces to go into because we're just, you know, getting bigger. The square's just getting bigger. So now we're going to go into our first corner space with our 3 double crochet cluster, and into all the next side spaces all the way around. You're going to just do 3 double crochets into every side space. And then in our corner, we do 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. And then in our sides, we do 3 double crochets in each side space. Just 3 double crochets in each space, no chaining. Just 3 double crochets in each space. And then we reach our side again, our corner again, I mean, and we do 3 double crochets. We chain 2 and do 3 more double crochets into that space. And then we have our sides again. So I'm just going to do 3 double crochets in each side space. And then we reach our corner again. So we do 3 double crochets, chain 2, three double crochets, and now we just have our few side spaces left. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my 3 double crochets into each side space. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet, and then I chained 1, cut my yarn, pull it out to tighten it, and there we have our finished granny square. And basically the pattern just continually repeats itself. If you did want to do another row, if you wanted to do 6 rows, you could just go ahead and attach your yarn in the corner again, or whatever corner you'd like, and then do your chain 2, 2 double crochets, then you chain 2, 3 double crochets, because remember that first chain 2 counts as your first double crochet of the cluster for the first corner. And then you go directly into the next space, which is a side space, with 3 double crochets, then go into the next side space with 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets, and all of the side spaces just get 3 double crochet cluster, just like that. And then, you know, you reach your next corner space, you do 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, all your sides just get 3 double crochets, then your corner, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, and this pattern just completely repeats itself. No matter how big you make your granny square, you can make the biggest granny square ever or the tiniest, you know, but that is basically just how you do a granny square. Very simple. And for my project, for my pants, I'm thinking I'm going to need, I think I calculated about 76. I think I calculated 76 granny squares, and I have 56. So today I need to make 20 granny squares. I've been making about an average-ish of like 20 a day. But I mean, it definitely depends on how many you can make at a time. But yeah, I've just been averaging about 20 granny squares a day because I do have a deadline for this project to get it done. So I've been working very hard on getting it done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what kind of measurements that you need to figure out how many granny squares you need to make. And I made mine based off of a 5" by 5" square. But if you make yours smaller, you just have to take that into consideration. But I'm going to show you based off of a 5" by 5" square, how to take the measurements to find out how many granny squares you need to make for your size. And even if you need to like whip up an extra one when you're like, which I might have to do, and my calculations might be off by a bit, you might have to whip up a couple if your calculations are just like a slightly bit off, which is okay. It's not a big deal. I might make a couple extra just in case. But I'm going to go ahead and make 76, possibly 80 if I do have the time. But I'm going to go ahead and make as many as I can today. And then I will show you guys what measurements to take so you can have the correct amount of your granny squares. And I hope this was easy, and I hope you guys make a lot of lovely granny squares. So I only have 13 left to do. We are getting there. I have this bin full of them. It is very exciting. I remember when I put my first one in here and I was like, are we gonna get done? And yes, we are. It is getting done. So yeah, I have to make a few more tonight. Well, more than a few, but you know, I'm gonna go ahead and make some more. And it's so exciting because it's getting filled up so quick. And we only have, how many's in there? 65? I only have 11 more to make. I'm really excited, so I'm gonna get going and try to make them all by tonight. I wanted to quick show you guys my sketch here, and what I need 76 total squares because I took my measurements. You need your waist, your hip, and your inseam measurement, and around your thigh. So that's waist, hip, inseam, and then around your thigh, just so you can calculate how many squares that you're going to need for this project. I needed 76 because for me, for my measurements, and for my squares, each square is 5 inches, 5 by 5. If you make 4 by 4 squares, you'll just have to calculate that differently, but each of my squares is 5 inches by 5 inches. And for my waist, I calculated that 8 squares around would be good for my hips and my waist and around my bum. So that was perfect for the 2 rows, so 8 squares. So that's 16 in total for up here. And then I measured around my thigh, and I got to the measurement that made me need 5 squares around my thigh. So that means I need 30 squares per leg, 5 around, and then 6 down because of my inseam measurement. And I'm going to add some stitching to the bottom just to add a little bit more length. And I'll show you that as we get into the design part and the assembly and all of that. So yes, basically you just need to get these measurements and then calculate with the inches of each square with how many you're going to need. But yeah, that's basically all that you need to know for the measurements and everything. You just need to do the waist, the hips, inseam, and around your thigh, and then that will give you the total number of squares that you need for your specific size and your specific set of pants. And this is a very customizable thing. Everything with crochet is, and we want to make our clothes to fit us perfectly and comfortably, and that's why I like to do my sketches. I like to do all the math just to make sure everything fits perfectly. So you go ahead and do that. I think I have, yep, I have a thing here just so you can see which measurements that you need. So now I'm just arranging all my squares and going to start the assembly part of the pant. So I'm just laying out my 30 squares each for the legs, and then the 16 squares for the waist and hip measurements. So here's what everything looks like all laid out. And we're going to start our whip stitching going all the way down and then all the way across as I am showing here. So we're going to first do our whip stitching going all the way down. So first what I'm doing here is I'm attaching my yarn at the top of the squares here and just tying it nice and secure. And then I'm going to begin my whip stitching. If you want to do slip stitches, if you want to do any kind of assembly that you are most comfortable with, that is definitely up to you. But as you can see here, I'm not inserting my tapestry needle through all 4 loops. I'm just inserting it through the 2 that are closest to each other. As you can see, both of those loops there, and I'm just going to sew all the way down just through those 2 loops that are closest to each other. And again, if you want to put it through both loops, if you want to slip stitch, if you want to single crochet them together, you just do whatever works for you best and whatever you're most comfortable with using. I just found that the whip stitching looks the most seamless, like not as bulky as some methods would be, but this is just the method that I liked using, so this is the one that I chose, just putting my tapestry needle and sewing all the way down. And see how I have the wrong side. Make sure you have the wrong side of your granny squares facing up, and then just pick them up like how I'm doing and connect them together. And when you connect your granny square, the next couple granny squares like I'm doing here, just go ahead and go back and forth a couple times. Go back and forth in both sides just a couple times to add a little more security to that seam. So I just went back and forth a couple times, and I'm just continuing this all the way down this row, connecting my granny squares, going all the way down. And after we go all the way down, then we're going to go across. But see, as you can see here, I'm grabbing just those 2 closest loops to each other. But again, whatever method that you are most comfortable with using to connect your granny squares, if you want to do the join as you go method, whatever method you are familiar with or you enjoy using or you're most comfortable with using. So yep, I'm just continuing on with my pattern here of going all the way down and connecting all of these squares together, making sure they're all facing the wrong side. And I'm just connecting them with my same whip stitch, and then I'm going to go back and forth a couple times when bringing in a new square, just to make sure everything is super safe and super secure and all in place. And then just continue down the line until I have no more granny squares left for this row. Before I sewed everything together, I blocked them, all my granny squares, on these wooden blocking boards that my husband made me. And I definitely recommend blocking your squares before you sew everything together, just so they're all nice and even and the same size. Like each of my squares are 5 by 5, and that's exactly what I wanted. But yeah, my husband makes these beautiful boards, and I was able to use them to block all of my squares, and it worked really, really well. So if you guys are interested in those, just keep following me on Instagram, and I will update you when they're available. And having your squares blocked just helps a project like this, especially that really needs to have the measurements very accurate, just so it's not too big and not too small for you. And I let them sit pinned to the boards for over 48 hours, just so they had a higher chance of drying better and keeping that 5 by 5 measurement and that nice square shape that I wanted. Now that my first down row is done, I'm going to go ahead and continue on and do all of the rest of the down rows and just repeat exactly the same thing that I've been doing with this same exact stitch to join. And you again go ahead and do the same thing, the same stitch or whatever you're using to join your granny squares, because there are a lot of different methods that you could use, and sometimes it does take some time to figure out what method you like best to join your granny squares. And for this project, I felt that the whip stitching was the easiest method for me personally, and it's definitely up to you. I definitely underestimated how long it would take to assemble everything because it took quite some time. It took hours, and I was expecting it to just be like, oh, I'm gonna be done in a couple hours. No, it did not just take me a couple hours. It took a while. So you want to make sure that everything's nice and secure. Okay, so now that I did all of the down rows, so now I'm going to do all of the across rows, and it's literally just the same exact thing. Here it is, one of the leg panels, all completely done. I really love how it looks. It's like a little blankie, but it turned out really, really nice. I'm really, really happy with it. And now here is the hip section. So I'm gonna go ahead and, since I did the other leg, both legs are done. And now I'm going to sew together the hip section. So I'm gonna go all the way down, and then there's like only a row of 2 going down. So technically, actually, I'm going all the way across first, and then I'm gonna go all the way down each square. And then all of the squares will be, after we finish the hip section, all of the squares will officially be assembled together. And then at that point, we can go ahead, once we have the hips and the legs done, we can go ahead and assemble every piece together. And that's where it got a little bit trickier for me to figure out. Just I'll explain it to you in like a minute or so, but it did take me a hot second to figure out how to assemble the legs to everything and just make it nice and seamless. And it did take me a second, but I got it figured out, and it turned out so well. I am just super happy with the finished result and how everything came together. The time and energy that it took to figure out how to put it together was definitely worth it. Now that I have both legs and the hip section all seamed together, let's go ahead and turn it into pants. All right, so here I have my entire, like all of my panels laying out. So the 2 at the top here, that is my waist, and then all of these ones, you can see the separation here. This is one pant leg, and this is the other pant leg. So I have my 2 rows of long granny squares at the top. With my measurements, I need 5 across on each pant leg, but the problem is I have 8 at the top. So when I fold the 8 in half, the pant legs themselves are too big to be just directly sewn onto the waist part. So if I had 10 for the waist part at the top, then 5 would go on either side. You know what I mean? Like 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When folded in half, it would be even 5 and 5. But since I have 4 and 5, they're uneven. So I just have to kind of do a different method because of that. Just because my measurements, these will fit me nicely, but because of that, I do need to make some adjustments. So because of that, I have to do a whip stitching here. I have to do some like how we whip stitched everything together, and I'll show you that more up close, but I just kind of wanted to explain it if you're like me and have different number of squares both on top and everything. So I just wanted to explain that real quick, and then we're gonna assemble it together, everything together in just a second. And because here we have the middle part of the waist, and this is one side of the pants and the other, and this is the middle here, and we want to sew this section of the legs from here to here, and this one from here to here, right in the middle. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 squares here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 squares on this side. So we have to make sure that they are both in the middle. So we want to start off by sewing right here. So because I have 4 squares up here and 5 squares down here, I need to do a different type of whip stitching to accommodate that. And if I had 4, Like if you have 4 here, you could just line them up perfectly and not have to worry about this method at all. If you have like an even amount on top and even amount on bottom, like they match, then you don't have to worry about doing this method. But because I do have a different measurement, like 5 needed here and 4 needed here, I need to do it this way, which is great because I love this about crochet, because I love making clothes to fit me. Clothes are meant to fit you. You're not meant to fit clothes. So that is why we are just gonna make any kind of adjustments necessary. I'm gonna kind of just eyeball everything. And if you wanna like figure it out a little bit more precisely, that is totally up to you, but I'm just gonna mostly eyeball the whole thing. So I'm gonna show you a little more up close what I'm gonna do, but make sure that you have your 4 or however many you have, even on one side, even on the other side. If you need to add a stitch marker to help you, totally do that, but I just wanna make sure that you have both of your legs even on both sides and the hips even, everything nice and even. So now I have my one side of the leg here, and then I just zoomed in a little bit, and this is my 1, 2, 3, 4 squares here on the hips. So what I'm gonna do is go in the corner of this one and the corner of this one, and I'm just going to tie my yarn here nice and securely, just to get it nice and safely put in. Okay, so I'm gonna move all my ends, and what I'm gonna do is kind of just do some squishing. And again, if you want to do this precisely, you are more than welcome to do it precisely, but I'm just going to squish with whatever is comfortable, and have make sure to have the other end lined up nicely with the other end. Let me show you, like that. Okay, so now I'm gonna start my first, I'm gonna pinch up just like we did for the last one. I'm gonna start my first stitches here. We're gonna just do the same whip stitching method for most of the stitches. So I'm just gonna go, keep going in those 2 stitches that are closest to each other. This one, and then this one, and I'm just going to keep on doing this. Okay, so now as you can see, we don't have our squares perfectly lined up, and that is what we want. Since we have 5 squares here and 4 squares here, we're trying to meld the 5 into 4. So we are just going to keep on going with what we're doing. It's kind of like squishing together really well. And I think it's looking really, really good. But this is definitely, you know, if you want it to be super precise. I just think that, like, aesthetically mine's looking the way that I wanted it to. And whatever way that you want yours to look, you just do what is best for you and what you like. That is definitely the most important. I am sewed up to here, and we have this much left, and it's looking very good, and I'm very happy with it, with how it's looking. So I'm just going to keep on going with this, what we've been doing here, and you go ahead and keep on going with yours. And the same thing that I'm doing here, I'm going to do on the other side with this side of the pants. So if you want to go ahead and do the same, I will meet back up with you once both sides of our legs are sewn on to the hip section. Also, another thing, I'm on the other side right now, but another thing is, don't forget to kind of as evenly as you possibly can, like how we're squishing them together, just make sure they're kind of like the squishing that you're doing is even on both sides of the pants. as even as possible. Like mine are not perfect by any means because I kind of thought of that as I was making this one. So I kind of like towards the end now I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of probably should be doing that. But yeah, just so you know. Okay, so now I have the legs sewn to the 2 rows of hip, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like with the 5 melded with the 4, and I think it looks lovely. Super, super happy with it. But again, if you have like 10 squares all the way around for your hips and then 5 for your legs, then you don't have to do any of the melding because, you know, 10 folded in half is 5, and then, you know, you have your 5. But yeah, I just had to do that adjustment because I needed 5 and I had 4 up top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this like this and then fold this one. So we have, obviously this is the inside of the pants, and I'm just folding it like that. Okay, so now we have the legs starting right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew the hip section closed, and then I'm going to cut my yarn and stop, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew this leg closed. Don't sew these 2 together, sew your legs closed. See how we have 2 flaps for the legs? Go ahead and whip stitch those together, or whatever method you want to use. But I'm just going to whip stitch them together like I whip stitched everything else. But yeah, just this back part here with these 2 rows of granny squares, cut my yarn and then grab another set of yarn and go ahead and whip stitch this leg and whip stitch this leg. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then after that, I'm going to show you guys how to do the waist part and then how to add a little bit of something to the bottom of the pants. I've sewed all the way down the bottom, and then once I got to the final square of our hip section, I'm just going back and forth quite a few times, and then I'm going to weave in my end nice and tight, just because we want this area to be nice and secure. Well, like every area we want to be nice and secure, but this one we just want to make sure we go back and forth very nicely. And then I'll weave in the end in just a sec. But I also wanted to show you for our legs, you want to make sure that you have both of the front and back squares very evenly lined up, just like that. So you have it nice and even. So attach your yarn right here so your pants are nice and evenly sewed all the way down. So make sure you attach your yarn right in the corners of the squares. And here are the pants all put together, all sewn together, all assembled. I am so happy with how they turned out so far. I am definitely in love with them. But now I need to go ahead and show you guys how to add a waistband and then the drawstring for the waistband if you need that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. This is the hip section. I have everything sewn together. But this is the hip section, and now we need to make our waist section. And to do that, if this fits your waist nicely, you can just do normal rows, but I need to do some decreasing to kind of make it a little bit, go in a little bit for my waist size. So I have my measuring tape here, and go ahead and measure yours from one end to the other. And I need to make, and then figure out how many inches tighter you need to make yours, and I'm going to figure that out for me, but also remember that crochet stretches quite a bit, so make it 2 to 3 inches smaller than your measurement, just because crochet does stretch itself out quite a bit. So I'm going to do some decreasing rows of double crochet. I'm going to attach my yarn to the back here, and then I'm going to make quite a few rows for the waist, just because if I want a little bit of a higher waist, not too high, but also not too low. So I'm going to attach my yarn, my black yarn, to the back here and make some decreasing rows for my waist, so I can kind of make that measurement that we have here for the hips smaller. I have my yarn attached here, so I'm just going to insert my hook and chain 2. I'm going to put Now in the first stitch, I'm going to put 1 double crochet, and then in my next stitch, I'm going to do a double crochet decrease. So that is just yarning over, inserting your hook into the next stitch, pulling up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. You have 2 loops on your hook. Now we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all 3. And that is a double crochet decrease. Now in the next stitch, I'm just going to do 1 normal double crochet. And then in the next stitch, I'm going to do again that double crochet decrease. So in every other stitch, I'm going to be doing a decrease. So I did a normal double crochet. Now I'm going to do a decrease, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert into the next, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3. So in every other stitch, I am just putting a double crochet decrease. So we can make our waist smaller. And I'm just gonna go all the way around doing this double crochet and then double crochet decrease, double crochet decrease, and I'm going to do this for this entire row. Now that I did 1 entire round of this decrease in every other stitch, I'm just going to slip stitch into the first double crochet, and then I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work. And then I'm going to put my first double crochet into that same stitch. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing that we did in the previous row with a double crochet decrease in every other stitch. And I'm going to keep on doing this for a few more rows. I'll let you know how many that I do, but I'm going to keep on doing this for quite a few more rows. Yeah, and I'll let you know how many. But I'm going to keep on doing the same thing of a double crochet decrease in every other stitch going all the way around. I did 3 rows of the decreasing in every other stitch, and now I'm just doing as many rows as I want of just 1 double crochet in every stitch until I reach the height of the waistband that I want. So you can do this for however long or however short you want your waistband to be. And for the drawstring, I chained 275 chains and then just weaved it in through the waistband. And here are the pants, completely finished and sewn together. I am so incredibly proud of them. I hope you guys make your own and follow this simple tutorial and make the cutest pants you will ever wear. Thanks so much for watching.